Hello everyone, and today I'm presenting my final project presentation for Intro to Crime Scene Technician. For our first topic today, we're going to be talking about crime scene investigation and the scientific method. Crime scene investigation is defined as a process associated with the investigation of a criminal act, which involves a systematic process of documenting, collecting, and preserving all interpreting physical evidence. There's 7 types of personnel that will be involved in a crime scene, but there's actually only 3 of them that will show up and collect data. The first tier is the first responders. This is usually patrol officers, ambulance, and firefighters. When they arrive to the scene, they will call in reinforcements as needed. Patrol officers' job is to secure the perimeter, make sure there's no victims or anyone hurt on scene. And once this is done, they will call in for the investigators and detectives come in, which is the second tier. These people are usually specialized in their training and education, and they know what evidence to be looking for and what to collect for their investigation. The third tier is the crime scene technician. This group has advanced training and specialized ways of documenting, collecting, and preserving all information. The scientific method, that is used as a 7-step method to be used against the offender that can prove their case against them in the court. The 7 steps are: they first define the question, what is the crime, what is the crime scene. The next question they'll look for is they'll gather information and resources, which they'll recognize and document everything that is on the scene. Next, they'll form their own hypothesis, so their educated guess of what might have happened at the scene. Then they'll perform an experiment and collect data, which preserve and collect everything that they find. Next, they'll analyze the data to see if it's statistically proven or if the data is useful or not. And then they'll interpret the data and draw a conclusion of their evidence that they found. And lastly, they'll communicate and publish their results for the public to see the results and the reports. For the next topic today, we're going to be talking about first responders and specialized personnel. As stated previously, the first responders are patrol officers, firefighters, and the EMS. They'll be called to the scene if they're necessary and as needed. When they do arrive to the scene, the first action is to make sure that the victim is alive and still breathing. When that's established, they are to secure the perimeter and area and the evidence within, and to make sure nothing is damaged in the process. Once this is done, they have to make sure that they are in the right jurisdiction for legal rights. Usually if another department gets backed up, they will call someone else to come dispatch to a call that they have. This person will arrive to the scene and they can control the situation until someone from that jurisdiction arrives. Once the correct jurisdiction officer arrives, they are to maximize the safety of the scene and make sure everyone within is okay and well. They have to remain observant of everything around them, whether it be people, vehicles, or evidence that's on the scene. After this, they have to approach the problem in a harmless manner and try and defuse it. If it escalates, they are able to apprehend someone if necessary. Specialized personnel that will show up to a crime scene investigation if necessary would be investigators, identification officers, forensic surveyors, forensic photographer, forensic scientist, medical examiner, forensic nurse, district attorney, hazardous medical specialist, forensic engineer, the K-9 unit, federal authorities, and a firearm examiner if a firearm is found. Each one of these personnel have a different job, and they must wear right protective gear when arriving to the scene. When handling blood or like a dead body, you can lead to diseases like HIV, AIDS, hepatitis B and C, and tuberculosis if you're not careful when handling. So for our next topic, we're going to talk about fingerprints, trace, and impression evidence. When this evidence is found at a crime scene, it's sent to the forensic lab for further examination. They usually store this information in computers and will put it in sealable bags accordingly to protect the evidence. When they are examining this evidence, they are to separate the questioned evidence from the known evidence. Questioned evidence is a type of evidence or material of an unknown, and the known evidence is any type of evidence that originates from a known, acknowledged, or accountable for source. This can link multiple suspects to multiple crimes, or it can show you who's responsible for this crime. Impression evidence is defined as a minute perfections on a large variety of objects that produce markings due to their usage. This can be an imprint from a tool, object, or shoe print that's left at the crime scene. There's two different categories of impression evidence that detectives will look for. This can be compression or straighted. Compression evidence is the marks that are left when the instrument is in some way pushed or forced into a material capable of picking up the impression of a tool. And straighted evidence is the marks that are produced in by a combination of pressure and sliding contact by a tool, which results in a microscopic striations. An example of a compression evidence would be police finding a footprint, bite mark, tire mark, tools, or fabric samples or imprints at a crime scene. This can give detectives clues as to what direction the suspect was traveling. An example of straighted evidence would be it leaving marks on the body or surface of an object and leaves a unique pattern that gives detectives clues about the movement of the object and what object was being used. Fingerprints. These are very known to be found on crime scenes. There's two types. There's smooth and there's volar skin. Smooth would be a sample of hair, sebaceous glands, or sweat glands. And volar would be, they find it at the bottom of your feet, the palms of your hands, or the underside of your fingers and toes. Trace evidence is an evidence that is small in size, such as hairs, fibers, paints, glass, and soil, which would require microscopic analysis. This can be very hard to find at sometimes, and detectives must be very careful with it, as it could be easily destroyed or tampered with. When they find this evidence, they have to use tools like tweezers, forceps, tape lifts, and vacuums to make sure all the evidence is collected and preserved correctly. Our next topic is about bullets and firearms. Every gun and firearm is unique in its own ways. A crime scene investigator can detect the weapon used by simply connecting small pieces of both the bullet and the markings to decide what specific type of gun and firearm was used. There's usually 3 different firearms that police find, which would be handguns, shotguns, and rifles. Each gun has a different bullet size, gun length, and firing action. Handguns can be semi-auto, fully auto, or a revolver. Fully auto handguns are actually illegal. Actually, fully auto handguns and rifles are illegal in the United States today. At a crime scene, detectives will look for shell casings. If any of them are not found, they most likely agreeable to the gun that was used as a revolver. Rifles can be semi-auto, fully auto, or single shot. Shotguns can be pump action, which they have a bigger bullet and they spread when they're shot. These 2 guns have longer barrels, which increases the distance and makes better accuracy for the shooter. If a bullet is found on scene, detectives will take as much pictures as they can in evidence. They'll look for the caliber of the bullet, they'll look for the bullet size, and what bullet was being shot. They'll also, if a gun was found, they'll look for the striations, which is the marks or grooves that the bullet creates when it's going through the barrel. Another measurement that the detectives will look for are ballistics, which is the study of a projectile in motion. Ballistics come in different measurements and procedures when studying and can tell detectives other answers. There's 4 different types of ballistics, which would be interior, exterior, transitional, and terminal. Another measure that detectives will look at is the gunpowder residue left in the gun. With that and the pressure that was built up, detectives can determine what direction the bullet was traveling in. And for our last topic today, we're talking about the manner of death versus the cause of death. Whether it's a homicide, suicide, or accident, police and detectives have to secure the perimeter and the area of any other threats that are around them before they begin their investigation. There's 3 types of homicides that detectives will investigate if needed. There's intentional, there's excusable, and there's justifiable homicides. Intentional is when a person intentionally goes out and kills another person. Excusable would be when a person is unintentionally and truly accidental of killing another person. An example of this can be if you're driving down the highway and someone were to walk out in front of your car and you were to hit them and kill them. This would be an excusable homicide. The next one is justifiable homicide. This is the killing of a person under authority of the law. An example of a justifiable homicide would be if someone were to be carrying a concealed weapon permit and they felt a threat towards them and they legally pulled out their gun and were to shoot the person and kill them. This would be a justifiable homicide. Manner of death is what the circumstances under which the cause of the death has occurred. There's 2 types of this that detectives look for, and they would be natural and unnatural. A natural manner of death would be a disease, and an unnatural manner of death would be a homicide, suicide, or accident that was initiated by either self-harm or to another person. And the cause of death, which would be is the injury or disease responsible for the pathological or sociological disturbances that resulted in death. So this could be the injury or disease that was responsible. After all this is done, the body, if one is on scene, will be sent to an autopsy for further examination. They'll take tests on body fluids and tissue samples. And that's it. Thank you for watching.